Hello, fellow Pain Geeks. It's Sanya here. Welcome to another Pain Geeks episode where we're going to talk about the process of reading papers and literature. My name is Sanya, and I'm one of the new members of the Pain Geeks. I mean, I've been a Pain Geek in my heart for a really long time, but I've just joined Laura, Christine, and Nikita as a new team member, which is something I'm really excited for. I must say, Pain Geeks platform, holds a really special place in my heart, and it has really helped me to develop as a clinician and as a person. I feel like I'm talking to the audience I know really well because I keep seeing the same faces popping up on the videos and same names, but I don't really know you, but I feel like I know you. I am trained as an osteopath, and I have a special interest in working with people who experience persistent pain, which I have a privilege to do as I work in a Lincolnshire community pain service, which is a job I'm really proud of. What else do I need to tell you about myself? I have a background in humanities and literature, which is something I do love to talk about. I must say I don't know much about a world outside of the world of pain and art and poetry and literature. So my world is really small, but it's really rich and meaningful to me. And today I'm really excited because I have a privilege to talk to somebody who I really admire, and somebody who I think we all admire, and somebody whose work I think has really given us a new language to talk about and to understand pain. And that is, of course, Eugenie Lee. Hi, Eugenie.
Hi, Sanya. Hi, everyone.
So I think we all know you really well, but do you mind just introducing yourself?
Sure. My name is Eugenie Lee. I am an experimental artist and I give pain for a living. So to expand upon this elevated pitch, I create artworks all about persistent pain, and I see myself as an alternative storyteller. So I combine subjective perspective of persistent pain experience, mine and also other people living with persistent pain, and also objective perspective from pain science that I started researching, and also work with other pain researchers since 2014.
Yeah, what a fascinating blend. And I'm really excited to talk to you because you really have so many different perspectives. As an artist, as somebody who's really interested in pain science, I know you do work around virtual reality and haptic belts and all of that, but also as a person who have experience of living with persistent pain. So this month we are interviewing, researchers and scientists and clinicians and artists to discuss the kind of a process of reading papers and literature, and how do we choose to read papers? How do we balance reading of the literature with our lives? But today we have actually a very special angle because we're going to talk about the role of art in that process. You don't really hear a lot of people saying, I have been reading about CRPS, and then at the same time I was also reading T.S. Eliot, so I can really embrace the complexity, and this is what I do. So I'm really interested to hear your perspective on this. So Eugenie, I'm going to ask you first question. So as an interdisciplinary artist who marries kind of the pain science and artistic expression, what is it that you want to gain from your audience? What is it that you're looking to ignite in people who are encountering your art?
As an artist, I don't know, I can't really speak for other artists, but for me, it's all about connection with the viewers or the audience or participants. And my responsibility is finding ways to deliver the context that I want to talk about that is really important to me. And it's not only important to me, but it is worthwhile sharing from my perspective. And if I can deliver it in a best way as possible, if I can connect with a viewer in a way that I want them to understand, then I would see myself, the artwork has achieved something significant. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a middle person. I am just a mediator, but my role is finding the best method to connect different worlds. Yeah, but also I'm also thinking about the equity that us as human beings, we're all equal. We all share same human rights, same values, and all this justice that we sometimes don't get to face. And I want to be able to find common grounds for my artwork. At the same time, acknowledging the diversity, that everyone's different, but we all share something common. And in my case, in my context, it's about persistent pain.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for this answer. I think you tapped on so many kind of perspectives and facets of this process. And of course, obviously, I agree with you. And as a clinician, I do reach out for art quite a lot in my process of not only to kind of do the art for my pleasure and to kind of switch off from heavy research so I can just read fiction. It's actually art I find is helping me to make sense of the work I do with patients. And it's helping me to understand my patients better. I mean, of course, I say this because I do have a background in humanity, so maybe this is just deeply instilled in my personality, so I do this anyway. But I do think that art has a very special place. You know, it's kind of, you know, in the world of medical humanities, if we look at the philosophy and psychology, I do find art very special because it does remind us that as human beings we are relational, that we need each other, that relationships are, as a matter of fact, all we have in this life. And I think art, as you said, you know, rightly said, so it kind of, because we do encounter that other through the arts. You know, I come to encounter the world that lives outside of my own world. And I think this is such a kind of a deep bone of the clinical practice that we do as clinicians. You know, because we work with people who have, you know, come from different backgrounds, different cultures, speak different languages. I mean, even the very experience of pain, like for me, that's the other. So I have to be able to encounter that with respect and with appreciation, as you beautifully said, kind of recognizing shared humanity, but within our differences, because I don't have that experience. You know, if I work with somebody who's on dialysis, like I don't have that need as a human being. So
yeah, it's just really amazing that you stay open-minded, and I think that's just one of the most crucial ingredients to be able to connect with people, and also to be able to appreciate art or the stories that patients bring. Because by the time the patients arrive at a clinic, they would have experienced this whole host of intersectionality that you wouldn't have a clue, and nobody expects you to have any understanding of it. Same with artwork, that if you encounter a new artwork or someone else's artwork that you already know of, but this is a new one, the artist doesn't expect the audience to understand everything. But as an artist, what I would expect is for the audience to stay open-minded and willingness to understand a little bit further. And to do that, artists they talk about their artwork. And that's the only way for the viewer to really understand the depth of what the artist is trying to say. Of course, there are different parts that you bring as an observer with your own set of intersectionality, with your own understanding and experience, and that would help to enrich the appreciation of that artwork, along with what you hear and what you learn from the artist, and why this artwork in front of you is what it is, the way it is, and why it is happening at this time. To understand that, it requires both sides, the observer's understanding as well as the artist input.
yeah,
Yeah.
I love the way you say, use the phrase of like two worlds coming together and almost like having to meet somewhere in the middle. Again, I think my mind brings everything back to pain and clinical practice. Whatever I read, I'm like, oh, I can see a link to my work. But absolutely, I think that sort of, I guess what I'm hearing from your words is this ability to appreciate an artwork, which actually isn't that dissimilar to appreciating the person in front of you. Like for me, the artwork is such a complex system, whether it's a written art or a visual art or music. And I think, it kind of resonates with that complex nature of the work I do with patients. And I guess it kind of nurtures that quality of being able to stay almost amazed by what you're observing, and be okay with being overwhelmed by being puzzled by the artwork, because we don't actually always understand what's going on, and being okay with that ambiguity, and also being kind of being touched and being moved and being surprised, and that perpetual kind of like seek for discovery, which I find so pertinent to the work I do with patients. I guess what I'm trying to say, that kind of ability to be present.
Yeah,
I think.
and stay curious. Be curious at all times, I think, because the complexity of artwork and the complexity of a patient right in front of you, there is just really no difference. It's just that we require, as a patient, but also as an artist, I require the observer, in the context of gallery or in the context of clinical relationship, I just want them to stay open-minded, because the artwork or the person has a lot to say. But at the same time, if you on your side remain curious, it helps me to open up, because that relationship is just so crucial. And if I can detect a little bit of a emotional or social barrier with a person that I'm ready to share, then that relationship's going to change. And the way that I share my story is going to alter. So my attitude and your attitude would also, it's always in constant flux. We're weaving stories together.
Yeah.
Even though that there is a certain amount of stories or the artwork is there, the depth, the complexity to unfold the story depends on this relationship that I have with the audience or with the clinician.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. I'm just thinking a lot about my work with patients, as you are talking about this kind of two worlds meeting together. And what I'm hearing in your words is that when we do meet each other in that curiosity and that kind of deep presence, there is this kind of a space for transformation, for transformative experience for both people, well, both
Yes.
parties. It can be transformative, which
Yeah.
I think. But it's it's a really difficult work, isn't it? Because it requires presence, vulnerability. It requires, when I talk about narrative medicine to my colleagues, I often say, have you ever been listened to so deeply and so presently that you felt transformed by that experience? And
But it goes both ways. Like, okay, so as an artist, the relationship that I want to have with a viewer, even though if it's a painting I've already created, there is a certain elements that I have done it consciously, but there are other elements that I don't know why I've done it, or some elements that I don't even know that I've actually done it. And I won't find out until a few months later or a few years later. Then I'll understand the complexity of my own artworks. It takes time, and I need that space to fully absorb about my own work and to understand why I did what I did at that time. And I think within that understanding gap between the creation and fully reaching that understanding. Within this vast gap, there are so much possibility and opportunities that we can explore as a creator or as a patient, an observer, or as a clinician.
Yeah. I'm so fascinated by everything you're saying. I'm trying to like understand and really like make sense, but it's really fascinating. It's almost like the ability to take perspectives, you know, as an experiencer, as an observer, which again, you know, I'm really speaking today as a from a perspective of clinician. To me, this just seems so pertinent to the work that I do, especially in the context of persistent pain. You know, it's just like I sometimes have this like a vision of like a windowless house, and I see like my job is almost like to see if I can open up the window just to let some light in, and we can't facilitate that if we aren't curious, if we aren't kind of present, if we aren't deeply listening, if we aren't kind of able to kind of recognize those opportunities and possibilities, and almost see everything as a potential for meaning, if this makes any sense.
Yeah. And also, it doesn't only come from your side. There has to be somebody from the inside the house open the door for you as well. So again, it's that relationship, it's that connection. And I guess from clinicians' perspective, it's all about how you knock on the door, how you approach would directly influence how I would receive your attitude and whether I feel safe enough to open the door or let the light in a little bit by bit by bit. So it's just relationship building that I find is so interesting. And I think it is just so crucial. And like I have done a lot of paintings in the past with a similar sort of attitude that I am in this safe house that other people may want to come in. But if this is my safe house and I'm going to let somebody in, then I have to be prepared that it is not something dangerous to me, has to be safe. And that would something that would make my safe space even safer, that my house would grow with lots of beautiful things that I feel comfortable with. And this safe space that you want to sort of knock on the door to let the light in, it's a sacred space for me. So it has so much to do with this relationship that we build together. And I remember, like I kind of mentioned it to you before with Dr. Sharon's narrative medicine, that sure, there is certain hierarchical order, that doctor up there or clinician up there, and the patient is always at the bottom. And this structure is, I find, whenever I come across Rita Sharon's work, she kind of shifts this hierarchical order a little bit, and it makes the patient feel like we're on an equal footing and we're almost like honoring each other's roles. And instead of her being a clinician, a doctor, almighty person who knows everything about you and tells you what to do, and it's just not that. It's almost like a coach. She's just drawing out about you with a hint that patients, that you have all the answers there. My role as a doctor is just drawing out that, using, translating a knowledge the doctor may have, they're weaving the story together, feeding into that story building with the patients. And it's almost like I go one step and you go one step and I'll follow along and then we'll go one step further. It's like taking a journey together. And I just really, really love to see that sort of relationship between clinicians and patients more often.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's so fascinating to listen to you talking about art. It's almost like you know, as beautiful as your art itself. And what I'm hearing a lot in your words is this term we talk a lot about in arts medicine, epistemological humility. So kind of, you know, starting from that point of humility and recognizing that no matter how many times we hear somebody's story, we will never know it inside out. There are, you know, as a clinician, I can bring my professional knowledge, but you know, the person's knowledge that they have of their lived experience is just as important, if not more important, actually. And how do we kind of again, as you say, with respect, with you know, walking alongside each other, and taking, you know, creating a space of safety, because as you say, you can't just knock on the doors and just start changing furniture and just you have to be you have to be allowed in. So no, it's really fascinating. You know, like I'm really passionate about kind of introducing more art and medical humanities and narrative medicine in education, because I see such a, again, I'm very biased as you are as well, but it's,
Yes.
I see such a huge role for this, and almost like a missing link in education, coming from osteopathic education. And I know my colleagues physiotherapists feel the same. And I do often wonder how do we bring this into education? How, you know, because it's often seen as something that just comes along, you know, oh, let's just do like a weekend course or just like do something extra. But it's so, you know, these are the deep bones of our work.
Yeah, it's at the end of the day, we are all just human beings, and we thrive in storytelling, and also we thrive in really good relationship, or the way we do things. It's more important than the content itself. So, you know, like we remember how we felt years later. Like we remember, oh, that person, yes. I remember, I can't remember the exact stories, but I remember I felt like this. You know, you remember that emotion and you carry that emotion with you for years. And so if we are to build this relationship with, you know, the clinicians and patients, it's all about how the conversation, that how this relationship is built upon that emotional engagement, and then content comes in afterwards. But often that people forget that content is the most important thing, and they forget the way it was delivered. But like going back to like a storytelling, story building, you know, you and I'm already building stories, having this conversation. That's how the relationship is. We're building things, this connection, the human connection. It doesn't matter whether within the clinical setting or as we're building friendship, it just doesn't matter. It's just that relationship building and how it's weaving its stories together. We're contributing towards a beautiful new story. You bring your stories and I bring my stories through this interview. But at the end, we have this beautiful collaborative outcome here. And you're contributing to this and I'm contributing to this, and we both have this responsibility. So our responsibility is how we're going to contribute towards this story building. And you know, like maybe after 20 minutes or 30 minutes of clinical um, consultations, say, the patient, after that consultation, will carry this story with them, and it keeps on growing.
Yeah.
And that will be growing based upon that delivery method, how you made me to feel building this story. And I'm carrying this and I'm keep on building it for weeks until I come and see you again. And what's going to happen? Like, you have the responsibility, whether you contribute towards my scar or whether you're contributing balm or something beautiful. that's your responsibility. And I also have the responsibility to respond to all these things and my way of responding to you. So that's mine as well. But I can't ask that responsibility from you because you've got your own. And so there is almost like a non-verbal agreement that we already had before I even walk into your room. You know what I mean? Is we have certain expectation and we are building upon that base, that foundation. Does this make sense?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's making sense in a way. What I'm hearing from you is that, you know, I think I'm hearing this process of self-discovery that happens in relationship to other people, because we as humans, we come to know ourselves as we relate to others. And I, you know, like when you are really young and people tell you, you have to really, like, you know, be by yourself and develop yourself. And then you're going to meet this person, like you have to, you know, you will be a perfect package and you will meet somebody. And I always thought that, you know, I never agreed with that, because we get to know ourselves in relationship to other people. So I guess that's what I'm hearing from you. And we all leave that process changed if we are truly kind of present in that relationship, and we really kind of, we are ready to be open, to be vulnerable. It changes.
Yeah, because already patients are coming in with so much vulnerability. They are just wide open wound in a sense. And the clinicians actually have a lot of responsibility because they have this status that we expect you to help us along, to give us some clue, because I'm just all tangled up here, you know, and your responsibility, I guess, is more so than what I would expect from my neighbors, you know, that I want you to come and just help me sort of untangle a few things. Then, and that way I'll be empowered to be able to untangle a little bit more on my own after.
Yeah.
And also building upon the story whilst untangling to make sense of it all.
I really love like the way you're using the word entangling, because I use that a lot when I talk to people who experience pain. We talk a lot about pain being like this entangled mess, and we are like entangling things. So that really resonates with me, that word. Oh, thank you so much for sharing all of this with me.
Oh, that's okay.
I also like the way you mentioned earlier about hierarchies, and how, you know, how engagement with art in a way flattens those hierarchies, because we simply come to know each other as human beings. Like I'm really I do a lot of like narrative medicine workshops with my colleagues from work. You know, because we operate in a hierarchical setting. You know, you're a senior, you're like a team lead, blah, blah, but it's so, you know, I'm interested in what happens when we leave those titles behind the doors and we simply enter the room as people. Like, you know, who are you? You know, what makes you tick? Why are you working in pain? Why are you interested in pain? So that's something that really interests me, because it's not part of our education, you know, MSK kind of at all. And I think we really need more of this. I think, Eugenie, we have a plan on how to change the world. We just need more art.
Yes, thank you for saying that aloud. Please say that 100 times a day, every day. Art is so important. And I guess I'm also witnessing this hierarchical order within the medical science. And also I'm just observing all of that coming in as an artist perspective, because the privilege that I've noticed that I'm in is that I can actually weave through those hierarchical orders. I can ignore all of that hierarchical order that you guys are all stuck in. It's just so rigid there that I can just ignore it because I'm an artist, and I just feel like I'm an artist, and they go, oh, are you? And so they tend to ignore their own hierarchical order, and they become human again, that they're ready to have a human to human relationship.
Yeah.
So I can certainly witness all of that in front of me, but I definitely see this such a strong ooh, hierarchical structure within your field that I just feel like, okay, I don't have a lot of that within the artist world, where a lot of us are really open-minded and very accepting, which I consider myself extremely lucky that I don't have to deal with whatever you guys are dealing with over there.
This is why we need our worlds to blend. And it always fascinates me how actually people, well, I don't like to say us and them or anything like that, but like, you know, I guess people within my profession, it's quite threatening for some people to kind of embrace that vulnerability. And it's not really their fault. It's just that education really dehumanizes us. You know, we kind of we look at the human body and you know, even if we just talk about pain, we have, you know, often such a reductionist view into pain. We forget about the human experience, and we focus into the mechanisms within a body, or you know, neuroscience, which is all very, very, very important, but we have to appreciate the complexity of it. And like, to me, you know, the basic science and kind of human experience, it's one thing, I guess. Yeah. So
There's such a huge gap between that objective knowledge and human experience that nobody really knows how complex our human experience is. It's complex, but it's so fascinating and full of opportunities that it's just fun. It's like the area that I'm looking at, it's just so fun. But all that objective structural things that you guys are studying, it is so necessary. I completely acknowledge it and I benefit from it every day. It's fascinating. But at the same time, we need to find this bridge.
yeah.
And that bridge falls heavily onto clinicians, I think. Because somebody like me, a patient, or I don't call myself patient anymore. It's almost like a lifestyle because I've been living with pain for nearly 30 years and I know how to manage it. And through my own lived experience, it's got me to where I am now. And I'm very, very happy where I am. And I'm very proud of who I am. If I didn't experience any of the pain, I would be somebody completely different. And I don't know who that person will be, but I am completely accepting of who I am now. And that is so thankfully because of my pain and other experiences, all of my intersectionality that I wholeheartedly embrace.
Yeah.
And I want to be acknowledged by other people that I find them important to share my story with. I mean, when I go into the clinician's room, their opinions are so important to me, yet my story is very important too. And I'm coming in so that we can combine their knowledge and my knowledge and all of that together. And I expect to come out of it with greater amount of beautiful story.
Yeah.
That's my expectation.
It's beautiful to hear you kind of almost expressing that ownership of your story, because yeah, you know, in my experience of working with people who experience pain, actually not everybody has that. And then we have to kind of again, safely, mindfully, gradually, slowly kind of start, I guess, nurturing that. But yeah, I really just sorry, I paused onto that because that's really beautiful. I'm going to ask you a question. Just I feel like we can talk the whole day about art.
Yeah.
What do you think, like, you know, again, in this process of, like, I guess, reading and educating ourselves, and what kind of questions do you think art asks of us? I think
guess,
we already touched on everything, to be honest. But...
yeah, I guess it is different for other artists because we all carry our own stories and our own agenda and context, whatever. But to me, again, it's all about that connection And what I create is just a medium to connect, again, maybe that bridge between different perspectives. But we are human beings. We all have something common to share. And that is what I'm creating just right there.
Yeah.
And it is up to me how I deliver this. Again, reaching into everyone's emotions. I can tap into other people's emotions. That's what art is. Art goes straight into people's emotions. There's just sometimes there's no logic, there's no rationale. It doesn't really matter. But we are emotional beings, and it is all about how my artwork will reach other people's emotions with the context that is important to me. In my case, it's pain. And I know a lot of people will be able to find that common ground that I'm trying to communicate. I mean, if I don't do it well, then there's just no emotional connection. So that's my responsibility. But it's all about, I need to use my creativity and curiosity and my knowledge to create a most potent emotional substance, emotional artwork that other people can draw into and take out.
I love that you bring emotions into conversation, because again, it's something that I think gets kind of missed in our work we do with people who experience pain. And I guess what I'm hearing from you again is this, that art inspires this full body experience, that as human beings we aren't just rational human beings. Just paraphrasing somebody pain science is not going to get you into the human experience. That as human beings we are affective, and we are emotional, and we are spiritual, whatever spirit means for different people. I remember when I first saw your painting attached to my adhesion, I had this real kind of physiological gut response, and I don't have an experience of living with persistent pain, and I was like, wow, like what's going on, like what, I felt like somebody's just like squeezing my gut, and I was like, this is almost like a historical response within me. Like I was really puzzled and really surprised by that response. And I wonder sometimes if we were to model different types of expression in clinical practice, in education, out there in the world, what would we get from people? I'm really interested in that. And I think, again, art, of course, has a very special role to play there.
Yeah, art is just another medium for people to connect. So like you said, a lot of pain science and all this knowledge that you want to deliver to your patients, it has to be delivered in a certain way. The way you deliver, just like my art, the way I deliver my context and what I want to do. So what you're doing and what I'm doing, there's no real difference, really. It's really about the method, the methodology, the delivery of that content. That you are that gap to bridge the two different worlds. And you use your own creativity to find that connection, that emotional connection, to get the patient's attention to what you have to say. But content is just content. People are not going to get it until you know how to speak their language.
Yeah, absolutely. So true. Oh, thank you for saying that our work is very similar. That just made my whole day.
Oh yeah, there's really no difference. You are a mediator and I'm a mediator.
Yeah.
We are both communicators.
And translators, absolutely.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
also wanted to add that it's just as you were talking about this, I was in my mind, I was brought back to my kind of experience as a teenager when I was kind of discovering the world of, you know, literature and humanities. And I loved reading so much. And I remember, you know, being 15, 16 and, you know, reading books like Anna Karenina or like Crime and Punishment. You know, as you can see, I'm very biased into written arts. And I remember having that kind of ethical awakening as I was reading these books. And, you know, because as you read, you make those judgments, you know, oh, I like this character, or I don't like this character, or, oh, I thought I liked this character, but I don't like them anymore. So it's this like a moral discernment that happens in that process of reading. And I remember us going to the classroom and having these discussions about, you know, is Emma Bovary an ethical woman, given she, you know, cheats on her husband not once but twice. And I remember I remember being always being the only person in the room saying like, of course she's an ethical woman, like. But you kind of, I guess what I'm trying to say is that you start, you know, by engaging with art, you develop that ethical reasoning, and you start to realize that people are much more, that human action is very complex, that sometimes societal structures can dictate somebody's actions, that people aren't just messed up and weird, that they may be a victim of wider structures. And you come to kind of experience that tension between societal virtues and personal values, and just realizing that things aren't just good and bad and black and white or truth or lie. I mean, maybe sometimes, but you kind of really enter that complexity. And I think this ethicality, you know, this ethical reasoning, I think, again, coming back to clinical practice, I think we sometimes forget about that. And again, it's so deeply infused with the work we do with patients. Every single decision we make, it's infused with that ethicality and the moral discernment. Just triggered my thoughts while we were talking about it.
Yeah. And I think, in my opinion, the clinicians have to be exceptionally cautious and careful that their own version of intersectionality and their own history doesn't pose as a barrier for the person sitting in front of you, because that person may have completely different ethics and moral standards, and you know, to them their story is okay or may not be okay, or they're just completely confused. It doesn't really matter. But all they might care about is this clinician judging me? Is this going to be a barrier for me to untangle my mystery? Because your role is just to help along as a coach, that your emotions and your judgment or any of that can fundamentally change this person's story building.
Yeah.
In a sense, because clinicians, again, that hierarchy, the hierarchical order, you're up there. So what you say or the way you look, the way you behave, your body language can influence this person way more than their neighbors could or whatever, or strangers. You have so much power. So my question is, are you willing to contribute towards this person's story building in a positive way? Again, are you going to contribute to this person's scar by imposing your own stories?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just that connection again. Yeah. I mean,
And
it is a fairly a heavy burden as a clinician to be aware of everything they have to do and be so careful of who you are and what you say, because what you say will matter to this person in front of you. But at the same time, it is an opportunity you have so much power, and you have a choice how to contribute that power. I mean, as Lorimer's dim sim analogy, I love that. I love that. That is almost like my Bible to me. Whether you want to be contribute as dim or sim,
Yeah.
or
And
maybe a bit of both, you have to make that choice.
yeah, and this I think comes from that ability to be self-reflecting, throughout the, encounter with another human being in a clinical practice, in the world. I think that deep reflection really is the bedrock of, I guess, of a human-centered care, and being able to kind of ask yourself, am I a safe person for this? Am I a safe place for this person? And being able to acknowledge our privileges and our penalties that we bring into the kind of encounter with our patients. But yeah, it all comes down to kind of, I guess, rehumanizing. Again, I'm speaking from a clinician's point of view, but rehumanizing our existence in clinical practice, and we enter the space as a human beings. So.
Yeah.
So now, when we have kind of agreed, Eugenie, that we can change the world by introducing more arts in education and in clinical practice, I'm going to ask you a question. Do you read much kind of papers outside of art? Sorry, I'm like throwing this at you after we have discussed art, but do you read any other kind of papers or literature, research papers? What kind of interests you?
All the time. I read pain science journals because I am a member of IASP, and whatever they send me, I just read them all. And I scroll through Twitters and whatever stuff, like Laura posts something. Oh yeah, that's like all of her stuff. They're all very interesting, and other pain researchers that I highly respect. But at the same time, I read a lot of disability justice from social model, because what pain researchers post is just so, I know you guys are medical scientists, so it is very heavily on medical model, but as a disabled person, we tend to go towards social model. So there's a uncompromising differences between the two. And so as an artist, as an artist who also bring in pain science into the artwork, it's my responsibility to be able to turn the medical model, medical science, into the humanizing the medical science by turning that into a social model of pain and disability. So I need to study a lot on both ends.
Yeah, I mean, we all do. You nailed it. I think we really need more social models. And, this is one of the reasons why I love narrative medicine so much, because it is a critical medical humanities. It's not just a humanities. It has that critical, it's a critical framework. And that kind of sees the world through those structural and intersectional lenses. And I mean, I completely agree with you. This is, again, so fundamental to the work we do as clinicians, as people living on this planet. So absolutely. And I like the way you said there, you kind of like go on Twitter, so you see somebody who you really respect, and you see what they share, and then you like want to read what they read. So that's another way of like I guess choosing what papers to read. I do the same thing. Absolutely. Yeah, I do have a huge interest in reading. Like I love reading PhDs with that kind of like have interdisciplinary aspirations. Where you kind of like recently I read a PhD, Poetry is a Complex System, which I found really fascinating. And again, it just brought me back to the clinical floor. Like, this is really what I do with patients. So I guess all these kind of non-traditional way of like engaging with literature, I think we definitely need to be opening our clinical gaze and our human gaze to different epistemologies. and social models and critical frameworks and poetry and art and, you know, basic science. It has to really be a full picture. But that's difficult to find time for all of that. But yeah.
Yeah, but it is so important as
Yeah.
clinicians because again, you guys are mediators. You are the direct link to a human being right in front of you who maybe just really messed up, just so tangled up. But you carry all this knowledge behind you, and it's your job to translate that into a language that they understand and also they feel safe to accept your knowledge.
And you can only translate if you speak all these different languages, because people will have different need for meaning making. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
but that translation is directed by the patients. Patients will tell you what language you need to speak.
Yeah.
So that again, that's just that deep listening, that curiosity and willingness to reach and receive just that relationship, that connection is crucial.
I think we have a key words of this encounter, Eugenie. It's connection, it's relationship, relationships, it's intersectionality. Would you add anything else? Just the main core themes of our conversation.
Storytelling. We are
Storytelling?
all storytellers.
Yeah.
And everyone, we all have interesting stories and they're all worth listening. Every single one of them. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for agreeing to do this and to conversing with me. I really enjoy this so much. I've written down some things I'm going to go on and further explore and just think through my mind. Do you have any questions for me, or is there anything else you would like to say that I didn't kind of open up the space for?
Oh, no. Like, I think we can continue this conversation for weeks and months, and we will still discover new things to talk about. I think this has been so fabulous. And thank you so much for allowing me to talk about these things, because I'm just like you, I'm just so passionate about this whole relationships and art and science and
Yeah,
just like you are, I'm such a paying geek too.
we are the paying geeks. Yes, and I feel really energized now after speaking to you. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm going to press the stop recording.